This was a really, really nice shop day, and we got a lot of little tips and stuff to share here. Now, we started off the day. The original plan was we were going to try to finish up Glenn's bike and then take a ride with the RD and the Ducati. Well, but the priority, the number one priority here of the whole day was, let's get this stuff mounted up now. Glenn has got new sprockets, new chain, bar risers. We got to check the clutch out. We had, these are the bar risers he got, and a brand new chain. We did half of this work on a previous day, and I wanted to pass a tip on that I think is really important, a super important thing. Glenn was working in his own shop, in his garage, during the week, and he was spraying some brake parts cleaner, cleaning up something on his 1098, and some ricocheted back and got in his eye. He had to go to the doctor. He has a problem with one eye now that it's relatively serious. And so what Glenn is passing on a tip, if you're using any of these harsh chemicals, which we're all using, probably a good idea to have safety goggles, but even better idea, I was thinking, down at Harbor Freight I see these, it looks like a face shield that that you can get for a couple of bucks, and I think I'm going to buy a couple of them. Just cheap insurance, and because I'm always working with some kind of crazy chemical or making nuclear bombs in my shop or whatever here. Anyway, Glenn got some of the parts that he started on, and we knew a lot of stuff was going to happen today, so we dug in early. He was actually here before I was done with breakfast. We were expecting Joe to stop by. I was expecting Chuck to stop by with the OSSA, which turned out to be real nice. I hadn't seen the OSSA in one piece yet. Now, one of the things on this bike, the back wheel was really greasy. Really, I don't think it was ever cleaned. And I used up a whole spray bottle of cleaner here cleaning this back wheel. And it really was, because we were going to put a new sprocket on. We were going to clean everything up. As long as we had it apart, it just didn't pay not to do that. And so once Glenn got the old sprocket off, and that had hook teeth and everything on it, so that was gone. Again, when you don't do maintenance at some point in the future, you really have to do a lot of maintenance. And here, now Glenn's got the simple green cleaner in by the swing arm, where nobody ever cleans their bike, but as long as we had this apart, it didn't pay not to do it. We did the back wheel. The back wheel actually came out, look at it here, came out pretty nice. I put a coat of Meguiar's wax on it, try to keep it nice. We took the cush drive off. I took it downstairs and cleaned it up on a wire wheel. Glenn was attaching a front sprocket. And again, cleaning up this area, if you could have seen this area when we took that little cover off, and anybody, now I know you go to dealerships and they just lace the chain through, pull it through with the old one. Yeah, that's, if it's not your bike, that's probably okay, but when it's your bike, and I spent a lot of time the week before cleaning this area out. And Glenn picked up right where I left off, getting everything down there as clean as possible. At least we can see what the issues are going to be. This little side cover had to be cleaned up. And when you start doing it, it looks like it's going to be a big job. It really isn't a big job, but it's a dirty job. But once it's done, and we took out the little polishing wheels, and I put a coat of Meguiar's wax on the wheel, thinking maybe that'll keep it from, from just deteriorating anymore. And when we took it out in the sun, it was noticeably shinier and golder than the front wheel now. So, of course, once we do some maintenance on the front, we'll pull the front wheel off and do the same thing to the front wheel. Now, another thing, he had these axle, this is what the end of the axle swing on the adjusters. These were in pretty brutal condition and corroded and as whatnot, but nothing, again, nothing that down at the polishing wheel and at the wire wheel, when they were done, they pretty much looked like new. Maybe even a little better than new. And then the moment I had waited for, now anybody hasn't looked on Windy Space U at the other videos, there's one of restoring the OSSA, and this is Chuck's OSSA. Chuck lives locally, so it was nice that he stopped by. He had the bike all in one piece now. I think he's even been out riding it. It looked like he was riding it. He's got new tires on it. The paint looks great considering what we started with and what the tank leaked when we started, and some of the plastic parts were cracked, broken, chipped. mutilated, sandblasted. I'm not sure what. It was really, this was a difficult restoration. And this is the first time I had ever really gotten to see it in one piece. And it really made my day complete to see it, because, of course, Chuck likes to go to the events where they show these older bikes and ride them. Of course, it's a rider, it's a driver. It's not a trailer queen. But and I don't know what the rules are, because I don't ride in dirt anymore, but this one I'm sure it'd be right up there with some of the nicer ones from that era. And I think Chuck said he has 12 dirt bikes. I'm not sure. He's got more than I have anyway, so we'll leave it at that. But Glenn had gotten to see the OSSA. I'm not sure if he was a dirt bike guy at one time. But nothing here. Now, I'm trying to make a deal with Chuck that if he'll give me one of his older dirt bikes, you know, that I can ride around on my driveway with it or something and get interested again. But the reality is, I know I'm shot. And what happens, I've had trials bikes and dirt bikes and motocross bikes and whatever. And whenever I get in the dirt, I just go crazy. I start sliding around, wind up going over the handlebars. And so maybe Chuck's doing me a favor by by not bringing one over here. I'm not sure, but I really was happy to see the way this came out. And again, this is one of those things that, you know, if you go to find these decals, they're all 20, 30 years old. The stuff is difficult to do the decaling on, difficult to get. In this case, this tank had to be sealed when we did this job. So it was nice to show Glenn this up. He's seen it on the video, of course, but there's nothing better than seeing it up close and personal, in my opinion, anyway. And it seems appropriate that here it is right with the RD, you know, a street bike from that era and a dirt bike from that era. Back in the day, when men were men and women were men. And anyway, back to the wheel. And this was, I'm going to guess, over an hour of cleaning this wheel up. And also another thing, and it annoys me when people do this, but they do it all the time, is there's really no way to avoid it. They leave the glue from the old wheel weights on. You can see it up here. And I was afraid to use acetone. Acetone will usually take it off, because I was afraid, not knowing this is old paint. This is from 1990, and/or powder coating, I'm not sure, whatever it is. It's usually not on very thick. Usually, and I found out Ducati parts, when you put any kind of polish on them, a lot of times 3 strokes later you're through to bare metal. So I wanted to be real careful about that. And of course, once we got the big part here, wanted to get, the main thing is getting the sprocket on, getting all the bolts cleaned up. This really did clean up real nice. I don't know what just a lot of time, but you would think that people would put the new wheel weights on, would have cleaned with some Gooby Gone or something. And a lot of times, to me, that's what separates somebody that's a true professional from somebody that's getting paid by the hour or whatever. I don't know. Or that I'm just a fuss budget. Who the hell knows? People have accused me of that in the past. Anyway, one of the points I wanted to make is, especially, this is a perfect example with Glenn. He had several issues on this bike that by cleaning it up, we found several loose screws. We found several things that really were not safe. A missing countershaft sprocket tooth, to me, is not safe. A chain that probably never was lubed in 20 years is not safe. So getting rid of a lot of this stuff, the objective is to have a safe bike in the end. Now, Glenn had replaced the levers on this bike. And in replacing them, and here he is, look, acting out his sexual fantasies here. Anyway, as every day at Wendy's shop is, it played out in ways that we never imagined. Now, we got the chain on the bike. We put this special grease, and I was showing Glenn the chain braking tool that I have, how nice and convenient it is to use, that you always want to get some of that grease in and get the little X-rings on there before you press the press plate on. And then using the tool, you want to make sure that those ends button over real nice. Now, getting this all back together, when Glenn was cleaning this up, and again, you always find issues. There's things that are loose, there's things, because when somebody doesn't maintain a motorcycle, they usually don't maintain anything. They put gas in it and drive it. Now, the oil on the bike was black. Glenn changed the oil once, and it's still black. And when we took it out in the sun, it looked like metal flake oil. So I have a feeling this bike might not have had the proper maintenance. And this is one of the year Ducatis that have had rocker arm issues, so maybe it's one of the rocker arms that's chewed up, and maybe at some future time we'll pull that apart and look at it. Getting this chain tool. Now, this is another thing, and I've said this on a video already. I've had 5 chain tools that all failed in service. And one day I was at Pete at Circle Cycle, and he says, man up and buy a real chain breaker. And I said, oh man, 80 bucks. Oh, I don't know. That chain tool has put chains on Tim's bike. I'm sure I've done all my chains. I have new chains on every bike. And it just, now this is the first time Glenn's used it, and Tim has used it, if I may have mentioned it. But we've got our money's back in spades on this. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, I shot a little video of this later. Glenn had, in the last week, flipped all the clutch plates around, and we deburred everything and cleaned it up. Did the drag race and tip a scuff in the plates. And I've got a little video of how the clutch sounded. But the deal was here, he wanted to go out for a short test ride. So Chuck and I were staying by the house. He threw on his helmet, got everything buttoned up with the axle. And by the way, the axle on this, to get the axle centered between the 2 nuts, is really a labor-intensive thing. I have no idea what the designers had in mind when they did this design, but not my favorite. So Glenn went out for a test ride. He got maybe a mile from the house, and this is still Rutherford. You can see the flowers are blooming. And the front brake locked up. Now again, because there was an issue when he changed the levers that they were not really adjusted. He thought it was pretty funny that he didn't go over the handlebars, but Tim has had the same issue, and I remember resolving Tim's issue and we were at Rockwell Cycle, and Joe with the Grizzo grabbed his front brake and it was locked up solid. We couldn't even move the bike. And so we now have this down to a science. We actually could be writing the book on how to resolve this problem. But anyway, we went down there, Chuck in Chuck's van, bled the brake system. He drove home without the front brake, using the front brake, got it home. And then the best part of the day, Karen made us all nice roast beef sandwiches. It was fresh roast beef, fresh whole wheat rolls, potato chips, fresh coffee. Couldn't have been any better. But then it's back to the dirty work. We resolved the issue with the master cylinder on the front brake, just with adjustments. He just had no play. There was no way to adjust these aftermarket levers, so you didn't have any play. Now I noticed I just put these similar levers on my R1, and you really got to be getting those adjustments right. You just can't eyeball it up and tighten them up without that. The master cylinder has to be able to back out all the way, and then even then have a tiny amount of play, or else it never backs out enough and you never get the pressure in the system to bleed back. So could be anybody that doesn't understand that. I'll be glad if they give me a call or an email. I'll explain it to them. And Chuck passed on some nice information that explains it too, that I'm going to send out. Also, since Joe has had this similar bike, Joe came over this afternoon, helped us with a lot of the work. We did the oil change. The oil had a lot of metallic, sparkly stuff in it, which it always has some, but this, I have the feeling this bike might have had one oil change in its life or something like that. We wanted to put these handlebar risers on. Relatively simple job, except for one thing, that of course the bolts are Loctited in and you really have to lean on them. Luckily we have some really strong men on staff here. Only we don't know who they are yet. Oil change done. Bar risers in, and they came out perfect. Now they're under here. They give you an extra half inch. Since this is kind of a semi-touring, semi-sport, semi-compromise, I'm not sure, but and it's got saddlebags, so I don't know, the half-inch can't hurt, that's for sure. And I, for one, am done with clip-ons. I need my handlebars up high to enjoy a 150-mile ride. And even on shorter rides, whenever I have a bike with low bars, I'm done with that. And I was glad to see that once Glenn put these on and sat on a bike, he said, yes, even a half-inch can make a difference in a bike. Not many people believe that, and I guess it has to do with age. When you're young, none of these things seem really important. When you get to be 68 years old, everything's important. You get one little cramp in a finger and it's important. And the bottom line is there's no reason not to custom tailor the bike to fit your own personal choice. And I've done that with all my bikes. And there's no reason not to do it. There's no reason not to enjoy every minute of riding. And if you're uncomfortable, what's the point? Now, this I thought was cool. I put this on for Art Conklin. This bike was originally bought from Amel Precision. Can you imagine? Now, we have, and we may even still have the video out there on YouTube of moving the dyno, and Kenny Augustine ultimately took it to California before he passed away. So, and that was a great night. We had a lot of people, Freddie Anderson and Art Conklin, and we ripped the dyno out of Amel and put it on a trailer, and Frank Straub took it home with him. It was quite a memorable night. Anyway, so what happened is the day dragged out because of a lot of issues. Basically, one of them being that we had a long lunch, an enjoyable lunch with Karen, which I thank her for. But we didn't get to go for an RD ride. I wanted Glenn to get a little RD seat time. He'd think he would have liked that. Now, this is one thing I always say. When you ride an RD and then you get on a bike that's big and bulky, you get on this and it feels like a rocket ship. It just feels like there's no motorcycle there. And this would have been the perfect thing to complement, to ride around for a half an hour, 40 minutes, and then switch bikes. Because this would have felt like a roller skate. But we'll save that adventure for another day. And when we got it all put back together and we were ready for the ultimate test, the ultimate ride around the block, which turned out perfect. And when Glenn got this all back together, I did two little videos at the end of this. One is, I think it's the next one, in fact. One is the video of starting the clutch. This is it. You can hear the clutch. You got a good feel on it? Okay. You don't have to do a wheelie for me yet.
I'm not trying to. I think the change is tight.
Loosen it up.
I can loosen it.
And this was the end of the day.
Just like that. Just like that. Another Ducati bites the dust. So today we got the chain on, back wheel clean, fixed the front brake, it locked up. Took care of that, the clutch. What else did we do? We had coffee, we had lunch with Karen, and I'm not sure what else we did.
Read the balls.
All right, give me a call when you get home, my friend. Oh, and we learned how to stall a bike out. Have you ever ridden before?
It's my first day of
All right, Glenn. Stay home, guy. And what's the biggest, most important thing? We had a great day.